Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Such.
And my name is James. How are you, boss?
Literally before recording, James says, I'm ready to go and rant if you are. And James, we've already had enough Tottenham rants this weekend, so no thanks. No thanks.
It was one of them when I was like, on the way home, I was like, I've really got to put this phone down. It's going to get regretful really quickly if I don't put the phone down.
How crazy again that like the big stories from the weekend is this whole Antonio Conte thing that's particularly kicked off, and we will touch on it and we'll get to it as we get through all of the games and what have you as well. But it was a blank game week with 3 fixtures missing this weekend. A lot of interesting decisions that people had to make in terms of whether they free hit or not, whether they had Brighton assets or City assets or United assets, or I don't know who's got West Ham assets or any other teams that were missing, and who to captain. And I think that the story of the weekend literally was Saka versus Kane for a large chunk of FPL managers. You went Saka, you've done okay. You went Kane, not so much.
Depends, isn't it? If you take me without Kane, I've got Saka's 36.
Yeah,
if you captain Kane and had Saka, he's 30 points with the 2, right? So it's only 6 points difference if you look at it from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, as is often the case in many game weeks, unfortunately, the decision on good week, bad week probably did come down to who you captained in the end.
And with the fewer fixtures as well.
I think 3 hitters probably, if they didn't captain Saka, which is understandable, yeah, most went with Kane. Probably wishing they hadn't. You know, if you could go, but if you knew what was going to happen over the weekend, you go back and you go, oh shit, the gains haven't been that big. Because I think nearly all of us prior to the Arsenal game yesterday was sitting on sort of between 20 or 30 points, except for those who might have had like Tyrone Mings, Alexander Isak, for example. But 3 hitters shouldn't despair. When you look back on it, the teams who were targetable over the weekend, right? Newcastle scored twice, Chelsea scored twice, Tottenham scored 3 times, Villa scored 3 times, Arsenal scored 4 times. Those 5 teams, with perhaps the addition of perhaps a Tony or Maddison, were the main targets over the weekend and actually all returned goals. Villa were the only ones with a clean sheet, right?
Yeah, I look back at it now and I didn't free hit in the end, James, because I didn't. The challenge was trust in certain teams, and the teams that the bigger hitters that were playing at the weekend were obviously Newcastle away at Forest, but I didn't see a clean sheet in Newcastle because Forest had been decent at home and it played out. Forest got a goal.
You absolutely knew that Sven Botman would make his probably first big error of the season, didn't you?
Well, I just thought Forest at home, right? They haven't been that bad. There's going to be a goal in it. I thought Newcastle would win, but I thought Forest would score. Tottenham away at Southampton. I have no faith in you away from home at the moment. I thought you'd probably win.
Just away from home.
I didn't have faith in that. I can't trust you guys, right? And Chelsea at home to Everton, I felt like the challenge there was Sean Dyche is Everton, and you don't know what's going to happen. That it's not like you can trust Chelsea because they haven't really turned the corner completely, and Sean Dyche's Everton will be difficult to beat. The only 2 teams that I had faith in were Villa at home to Bournemouth and Arsenal at home to Palace. Arsenal, obviously, I had 2 already in Ben White and Saka. So I wasn't free hitting to get a third. And Villa, I could have gone in. And the irony is, if I'd gone with Villa, I would have got Mings, Buendia and Watkins. It would have been 25 points and it would have been worth it. But hindsight is a beautiful thing. I ended up having to get Isak and Chilwell for a -4 over Watkins and Chilwell because I couldn't afford Watkins. Isak's obviously outscored Watkins this week anyway with 13 points. And
were you debating Watkins and Mings as well?
Yeah, and it would have been Mings, and yeah, we could have gone with Mings, and obviously Mings' 12-point or whatever it was quite out of the blue. And Chilwell sticks a cross in, and
that easily could have been 18 for Tyrone Mings, by the way.
Yeah, and hindsight in that, I mean, I'm looking at it, 67 with a -4, 246k game week rank. I'm up to my highest rank of the season, 166k. Didn't use my free hit.
And only played 8.5 players.
and bemoaning the fact that I didn't go with my 3 Villa as the other 3 that could have been even higher.
But if I had delighted.
If I'd free hit, I'm not sure if I'd have kept some of the players that I did keep that potentially got me points. So I'm cool with it. I'm moving on with it and quite happy.
On our Patreon pod this week, on Friday, sorry, I basically said you can't win this week because you were short.
Yeah, you said be ready to
but
lose,
you didn't pick obviously the captain Saka. In terms of those, I saw Chilwell captainers, Watkins, Tonys, Havertz's. They were quite. Kane. Saka's the only one who's really done well. I think Havertz was next best, right? And Saka's got double that. So more than double that. So obviously you've nailed the captaincy. That's important. And you brought in a real big differential, Isak, who's done really well for you, right?
Yeah. So 2 goals and it should have been an assist as well. So yeah.
Maybe the winning goal doesn't happen if the assist happens.
Well, yeah, of course. So they're 2-1 up already, and maybe he doesn't go for it and what have you. But yeah, so I'm all in all particularly happy. We talked about I've still got my bench boost, free hit, and wildcard up my sleeve. As it stands at the moment, I'm set up for the double game week with doublers across the board, except 3 players, 2 Arsenal, White and Saka at home to Leeds, and Harry Kane away at Everton. Other than that, I've got doublers across the board. Nico Williams is the inverted commas doubler, the half player, as you'd call it. So I think I'll be definitely moving on Nico Williams. I've got 0.6 in the bank, so I can go up to 4.5 for him. Danny Ward obviously didn't play for Leicester, so there's a question mark there. But
it's got to go,
You think so?
Judging by Brendan, if you want a bench push, judging by Rodgers' comments, it's worth saying as well, look, they haven't kept a clean sheet since the World Cup. But judging by Rodgers' comments after the game, he said, look, he did a right, Everson. We can't just expect him just to come in and not give him the chance and just give him 1 game. Kind of come out and made it look like he was saying Everson will start at least the next game again, which is obviously at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and there is a goalkeeper who is 3.9. I'm just making sure he is still 3.9. Who's playing at the moment because the main goalkeeper is injured.
Well,
so
you're talking about Fraser, are you?
Yeah, maybe.
England's Fraser Forster, we should add, after Nick Pope pulled out the England squad. We think Nick Pope's okay, by the way. Everson's 3.8. But this, you're going to have to be very, very careful here, right? You're going to move Williams, who's 3.8. Ward is 3.9.
Yeah.
With what? 0.6 spare?
Yeah.
You're probably going to need to move something else as well.
Yeah, but then we get into -8 territory. I don't think
that's all right.
I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced it's worth it. But I've got no panic. The next thing to consider then is obviously I've got my bench boost is lined up for 29. It's going to happen. Got a free hit and a wild card. Game 32 is now the next discussion point that we'll talk about in a second in terms of which blanks we've got now confirmed after the FA Cup results. As it stands at the moment, I've got double Brighton, single Manchester United, double Chelsea, and the plan would be to add Man City between 30 and 32 anyway. So that's 5 players plus 2 more I suspect I would have. I'd probably be 7 players down in 32. So I can free hit in 32. And I've got the wild card up my sleeve for 34 if there's going to be a tasty double and the run-in. It's my plan at the moment, very loosely penciled in. Bench boost next week. Free hit 32. Wild card 34. Bish, bash, bosh.
Yeah, I think you might end up looking at wildcard 30 when it comes around. I'm not saying go for that. I'm just saying you may want to keep that in your mind. I think following the double, you might come out with a load of doublers. You think, Jesus, I don't want this. And you might think, right, there's different swings of fixtures here. I want to go with that. So 34 is reasonable. You just get the best of United, City, Brighton from there, didn't you? And cover up the rest for doublers. And you don't have to worry about a bench boost while you do it as well. So, yeah, I think that's obviously fine to consider. Myself this week, I was going to say 67 points -4, but actually that's your team. So 58 points for me, 36 from Saka, saved it from being bang average. 4 for Maddison, 5 for Watkins. That's my lot. Bought Ben Chilwell really early last week for his 1-pointer. No regrets on that, actually. I think his expected goal involvement at the weekend, I think, was the highest of any Chelsea player, ironically, during that game. And he's in a good position, obviously, for those 2 doubles. The two fixtures in the double. So I think problems for me aren't bad. I've got 2 single game week players, Saka and Gabriel. And if they have to stay, they'll stay. I'm split on Saka at the moment. I'm still lean more into selling, I think. Remember, I've got shitloads in the bank. So Salah, Fernandes, whatever I want, even a third Brighton player is all under consideration.
You want to hold a bit of money back for Haaland?
It's not a problem. So you've got over 10 million in the bank. So Tony to Haaland in 30. I still have about 1.8 in the bank or something. It's not a problem. Even if I went to Salah. Gabriel, I think, will go. It's probably Luke Shaw, Brighton defender. It's probably going to be one or the other. Iheanacho's my biggest problem, though.
Yeah.
Now. So, and I always knew I was taking a chance on this one. But then I think it's probably quite straightforward just to... If it was a single game week, and I was like, right, I need the player to play this week, I don't think I'd hesitate to go, I'm just going to take the -4 for Isak. So I shouldn't look at, I'm bench boosting, I want to be careful with my hit. No. If Iheanacho's got serious doubts on his minutes now, Iheanacho could play, right? He might not start at Palace, he might start against Villa, and that makes me think, I'd want to keep him. Then Bournemouth 30, you think, it's great. It's part why I'd got him in 26 to 30. We always knew this was a possibility. And unless, I think it came out that Daka was injured, he's probably got to go. And I think if Newcastle have the extra fixture in 31, then Isak, double, single, double, he's probably where I want to go. He also covers up 33 and 34 quite nicely. Everton away 33. Southampton own 34, which I'm not going to be able to match up to those obviously wildcarding in 33 in terms of the number of doublers. Newcastle have a great fixture that day. So if he ends up staying for a while, fine. And I think if you look at his returns, he's got 6 goals in 621 minutes in the Premier League this season. So, I think he showed enough liveliness on Friday night to suggest, I'm not saying he'll start every game, but he's going to be in front of Callum Wilson now, I think.
Till he gets injured.
Till he gets injured, and then we have to do something else again.
Such a pain, but yeah, understandable. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, do we know when this Brighton Newcastle game might get announced? If it's going to get announced soon?
So, obviously, FA Cup quarterfinals done over the weekend, so we know the semis now are Brighton v United and Manchester City versus Sheffield United. Those ties will take place in game week 32, which means, as you'd already said, United, Chelsea and Brighton, Man City will be postponed 32, 2 blanks, 4 teams blanking, 8 game week fixtures. The game week 35 TV selections are due this Thursday. I think we may get an announcement there with it. I think with that, we'll probably get the 34 midweek. And I think we may get a Newcastle Brighton 31 as well. If it's not this week, I wouldn't stress. Next Thursday, they're scheduled to announce the 36 TV fixtures. Why they're doing it over 2 different weeks during this break, I have no idea. I cannot see the reason why they wouldn't just do it all together in one go. But I think, 34 fixtures we should know before 29 starts. And obviously, once we know 34, we know what 37 is essentially.
Going to look like.
Yeah. And there's nothing that's changed at the weekend in terms of my opinion, and it's only an opinion, that the games postponed from this weekend gone will go into 34, and the games postponed from 32 will go into 37. Obviously, because Brighton have 3 doubles, something has to slot somewhere else. Very importantly, the fact that City and United have obviously still gone through in Europe means that if they keep progressing in Europe, there isn't an available midweek for the Brighton games against City or United to go into 30. It can't. Brighton would have to play United and City respectively in 34 and 37 if they continue to progress in Europe. So the Newcastle game is the one that has to be in odds and sods. 31 makes sense. I think very importantly, Manchester United have been drawn away in their quarterfinal second leg, which opens the possibility of Newcastle Brighton being on that Thursday night in game week 31. Also gives a little bit of fairness, you could argue, for the Brighton Manchester United FA Cup semi-final, in the sense that it would be a 3-day turnaround for both of them. However, that would give Tottenham an advantage over their important game with Newcastle in game week 32. But I think, remember, BT have got the rights for that game. The fact that Manchester United is a 5:45 kickoff on that Thursday, I think they're probably quite happy to put Newcastle Brighton up against West Ham's game against Ghent, is my point, rather than putting it up against the Manchester United game. So I think 31 is more likely than 30. It's not to guarantee it will be. One interesting aspect, if Brighton's game with Newcastle does go into 31, it actually means they'll have 5 away games in a row in the Premier League, Brighton.
Wow.
So they would have Bournemouth, obviously, is the second part at 29, Tottenham 30, Chelsea 31, then Newcastle away, obviously, as part of that. City game would be off, then it's Nottingham Forest away in 33. And that's the little bit of doubt, I think. You have to ask, do the Premier League want to do that? Give a team 5 scheduled away games in a row? That's the only thing. And if you include the United game, which is obviously on a neutral venue, I guess overall it's 6 games, isn't it? So could they hold Newcastle Brighton back for that period after 34 and find out what City and United do in Europe in the quarterfinals? The answer is yes, they could. But I think there's a lot of logical sense now in Newcastle Brighton being in 31, probably being on the Thursday even.
Yeah.
We should know before 29. I would say if Newcastle Brighton hasn't been announced for 30 or 31, by the time game week 29 happens, we'd have to say it's extremely unlikely to. Think of the distance for the two clubs as well. It's near enough longest distance in the league, close enough, isn't it? Brighton to Newcastle. So the longer it goes, the less likely it is. And I think if we didn't have a Newcastle Brighton announcement by the time 29 happened, then they're probably looking to hold it till the end of the season. But then the flip is you can say, oh, Brighton 5 away games now over that period 30 to 33. But then they're also going to have 3 games in hand on some teams going into the latter part of the season, and they're challenging for European play. So yeah, you can spin that narrative either way. I think it's probably still most likely to be 31 for Newcastle Brighton.
Yeah, see, that dictates my transfers quite a bit, because I'm sitting on McAllister, Mitoma, Isak, Trippier now. Should that get announced,
but they become more attractive, of course they do.
Well, Ward to Steele and Nico Williams to Botman. It means I've got 6 of the buggers for game week 31.
But this is what I mean. If it gets announced, Iheanacho to Isak becomes pretty straightforward for me.
Straightforward, doesn't it? Yeah, exactly that.
Exactly that. I can't look at I'm taking hits because of bench boost. Just like, would I make that transfer if I wasn't bench boost? Yeah, I would. So get on and do it, for example. And it might be that it becomes Gabriel becomes Dunker Estupinan quite straightforward. But then there's the consciousness that there'll be all those away games for Brighton. Interestingly, for Brighton as well, is worth saying, if that 31 double happens, the first game's Chelsea away. And for Chelsea, that sits 3 days after playing Madrid and 3 days before playing Madrid, with very little to play for in the league. So it could be a heavily rotated Chelsea team that plays Brighton in that fixture at Stamford Bridge, which appeals as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the schedule. They've got Chelsea away and Tottenham away. They're better than Chelsea and they're better than Spurs. So I don't know what the kind of issue is. They're just better. I mean, they're just on Spain.
I don't know if they're better than Chelsea.
Well,
yeah, they are at the moment. Yeah,
they are at the moment. Yeah, of course, on paper, if you look at it and everyone to their strengths and all the rest of that kind of thing. But as a team, as 11 players right now, they're scoring more goals. They're keeping the ball. They're just better. So I don't have an issue of lack of confidence in Brighton in terms of their games are going to be difficult, and we can't trust them. And even if they lose, they'll score goals along the way, in my opinion. So it's cool. Like McAllister.
It's also worth saying as well, I think their 29 double is great, right? Brentford at home, Bournemouth away. It's a very good double. It's one of the better ones.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's talk about some of these games that we had at the weekend, James. We're also going to, listeners, cover off the teams that didn't play in terms of what their potential interest might be from a transfer point of view and their upcoming fixtures as well. We don't want to give them a miss. There's some interesting things there with United and City and West Ham and so on. Nottingham Forest 1, Newcastle 2 on Friday night.
Did you make I'm glad you made the deadline anyway. I was a bit nervous.
Well, mate, the clean sheet bust. Just typified FPL. It just annoyed. It was like standard. What else did we expect with the clean sheet bust for Newcastle? But they did go on to win as expected, and we've talked about Isak plenty already. There's no doubt about his talent and ability, and if he can get a consistent run of games, he's going to be a real good asset at that. Was he 6.6 still? 6.7 now.
I mean, I said if I'd have been on wildcard last week, it would have been him, Havertz, Watkins.
Yeah,
would have been the three that I went with, and he's going to be really popular now. Anybody who watched the game, eye test statistically, he pulls through from the other night as well. Callum Wilson obviously not involved, wasn't brought off the bench, interestingly, despite the fact obviously Newcastle were looking for a very late goal. Clearly didn't want to change the system, didn't want to take Isak off. I think that
he did say that he hadn't trained, right? You mentioned in his podcast that he hadn't
but
trained.
He was a sub, and they're looking desperately for a goal at the end. You kind of think throw them on together for the last 10 minutes or so, but he didn't want to change the system. And by the way, I think Eddie Howe was right because they were dominant enough as it was. I don't think Newcastle were perfect the other night. I think there was, particularly in the first half, there were some very sloppy moments defensively and both with distribution from the back as well. But they well deserved to win. There was no doubt about it. The offside goal, look, I'm a Tottenham fan, right? So I'm in competition with Newcastle at the moment. I obviously it was beneficial for me. It left me cold. I couldn't concentrate on the rest of the game.
It was a clearance.
With the offside goal, it just left me cold. Like it didn't matter. We've been through this a few times, and it just comes down to a dirty interpretation of whether Felipe intentionally played the ball or not. And I'm sorry, he absolutely did intentionally play it.
How can you not intentionally play it? Is what I'm saying. Like he went to kick the ball.
Yeah, of course he did.
If the ball goes in the wrong direction because he's done a shit job at kicking the ball, it doesn't change the intent. He still wanted to kick the ball. He just happened to kick it in the wrong direction by mistake.
I don't mind that. Who played the cross originally? Was it Isak played the original cross? Might have been, yeah. So he's crossed it, and at that point, it was Longstaff, wasn't it? Longstaff was offside.
Offside.
So
correct.
I don't mind on the principle you say at the point that Isak kicked the ball forward, Longstaff was offside. If we are saying that's a law, we all know the law, right? But the problem is, it's so subjective. Take the old Tyrone Mings incident at Man City, which we've referenced a lot of times, where Ming controlled the ball and Bernardo Silva nipped back in, and I think, or Rodri nipped back in and Bernardo scored. I can't remember. But it was like,
Bernardo scored.
It was clear gain of advantage. And also, even just go back very recently to the Wolves player who shanked the clearance when the ball was meant for Mo Salah, and Salah scores. And I don't know how you're deeming that the incidents in terms of the attempted clearances are different. So, and obviously Salah's gained a much bigger advantage. Now, as much as we hate that law where Salah scored there, we do, I think, have adjusted to know that is the law. So technically, by the law, as much as we all hate it, the goal stands. Then you've deemed this one to be completely different. It was weird. Really, really weird incident. It was one of them as well. That when you're watching it live, you've got no idea that there's a potential problem there. You've got a young boy who come on, Elliot Anderson, was really good as well for Newcastle. Has obviously scored. He goes nuts. He celebrates. I presume that was his first goal for the club, certainly first league goal. And that moment, it just sucked the life out of the game. And I must give Newcastle massive credit for regaining their composure and continuing to play, because I think you can sulk at that moment. I've seen teams in those moments really sulk and let it get to them. And it got to me as a neutral watching the game. I lost complete interest in the game. And I guess if I remove my Tottenham head for a moment, I'm pleased that Newcastle won the game because they deserve to win the game. What I'm not pleased about is the people that were asking me about 5.5 million midfielders last week. Which one should I go to? And I think a lot of us were saying, I think Almiron, because of the fixture now, the double 29, the extra fixture 31. And we got news, about 2-3 hours before the deadline? Seemed to break from Paraguay originally that he was out for a few weeks. And that's how it's looking now. And I'm gutted for anyone who went in. If you went in Friday afternoon after all the team news and bought Almiron at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm gutted for you. That's properly unlucky, because you think you've got all the information at that point, and it turned out that wasn't to be the case. I think my instinct was at that moment, did it make Alan St. Maximin a more interesting prospect for this little period as a direct runner. But the fact he was hooked at half time, and Anderson, who had, I want to say, shades of Ross Barkley about him in terms of his playing style, a young one, not a current one, did really well. And I wouldn't even be surprised if he stayed in the team, actually. Murphy's been rewarded for some good cameo performances recently by playing the last couple as well. May also stay in the team. I wouldn't invest in Murphy or Anderson, but it might be those two with Isak for the next game against Manchester United. It's just another one that adds to Isak. If I want a Newcastle offensive player, yeah, it's probably Isak. Forest,
they're dropping a little bit, like a stone.
Poor again. And look, they've lost to Tottenham and Newcastle in the last two, which is probably what we'd expect. Niakate come in the team. I said this time last week, Joe Worrell was horrendous at Tottenham. I saw Niakate was back in the team, thought this might be a bit better, this. And actually, despite the amount of chances they gave up, I think it probably was better. He has had an absolute brain fart at the end of that match to give away the handball and the penalty. They played an extra attacking player in the game. So I was concerned for them when I saw the offensive aspect of it, saying like Johnson, Gibbs, White, Dennis, and Ayew, like one too many. Just got swamped in the midfield. You know Newcastle were going to play a free in now. Got swamped, and I didn't agree with the selection there, to be honest, with Yates and Shelvey. Then you're putting Shelvey, spoke about him, Hollywood, John Joe Shelvey last week. You're putting him as part of a two. He needs an enforcer, which I think Yates is a very willing player, but I wouldn't describe him as an enforcer, and they're one man short in that area anyway. So I think they were looking to damage Newcastle quite quickly on the break. They had a few moments, but their best moment in the game was created by Sven Botman. Newcastle were thoroughly deserving winners. Forest have probably the best double in 29. You could argue Wolves and Leeds, two fellow opponents near the bottom of the table. They've just conceded 6 goals between them in their own encounter at the weekend. I don't know where I'd go. And Cooper, by the way, on Brennan Johnson. Was anybody actually surprised to see Brennan Johnson in the team? You shouldn't have been, even though Cooper was like, he's very unlikely. We said this on Friday, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the team at all. It's probably the 5th or 6th time Cooper's done that this year, where he's gone, yeah, it's very, very unlikely. And the player's been in the team in any case. He played really wide, Johnson. Now, it might be for these games he goes back into a little bit more of a central role, but I don't think, despite the fact Dennis scored, I don't think that system was great for Johnson. And he wouldn't, if they're going to play that again, he wouldn't be as interesting as I think he was perhaps this time 2 weeks ago, despite the 2 fixtures they've just had. Wouldn't go near them defensively.
They're on a void for me at the moment. I'm trying to pick teams that I can have a little bit of faith and trust in, and it wouldn't surprise me now if they are in the bottom 3 when the season ends. Despite some of their home games, I mean, you talked about the 29 double. It's massive for them to pick up some points.
I think if they do badly in it,
falling dropping like a stone a little bit. Leicester are also not doing particularly well. And I look, this weekend, you sometimes, I'm like, oh, West Ham aren't playing this weekend. They can't fuck up my weekend. Somehow we managed to still get into the relegation zone without even playing a fucking game of football. But they're the ones that I look at up ahead of us. Forest are the ones that I can see slipping in. Leeds as well, but then they've just come off the back of a win. It's so tight down at the bottom there, but Forest need to think about it. Their last 3 home games. Okay, you got City, Newcastle in there, but Everton as well. They've picked up 2 points. The draw at City was unexpected, but they would have hoped to have beaten Everton, and now they've gone and lost at Newcastle. It's just dangerous.
City?
No, at home against City.
Who?
Forest.
Oh, yes. Sorry, the Chris Wood equaliser. Yeah. Sorry, complete mind blank there, mate. They're a big. Those 2 against Wolves, Leeds are huge. Because if you look at the fixtures afterwards, Villa away, have been 3rd best team in the league since Emery took over. United, Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford away. We've still got to finish with Chelsea and Arsenal, 2 of their last 3 as well. Oh, grim, really.
It's not looking good.
So I think it's a really big double for Forest. And they're capable of getting 6 points from those 2 games, by the way. I think they'll need at least 3. Because I think if they come out of that with none, then yeah, you're worried about them. 2 weeks ago, Serge, we sat here and went, oh my God, there's 6 points between the bottom 8. Last week, when there's 5 points between the bottom 8. This week, 4 points between the bottom 8. It'd be a miracle if we're sitting here in 2 weeks and it's 3 points between the bottom 8. Besides, it's getting more condensed every week. It's brilliant. It's thrilling to have 8 teams down there all shitting themselves together.
Not when you're in it, mate.
Yeah, sorry about that, mate. I love the fact I looked at the table this morning. I was like, West Ham have got a game in hand on everyone now, forgetting that it's Man City away, obviously.
City. Well, it depends how you look at it. I think I'm counting the Southampton home game as the game in hand, and the City games as part of our regular fixture run.
Yeah, okay,
you mentioned something there about Unai Emery having the third best record since he came to Villa, or Villa having the third best record, let's say, since Unai Emery came, which is a segue, James, into Villa 3, Bournemouth 0. Look, 20 shots, 9 shots on target, 5 big chances, XG of 3.66 without a penalty in that, which quite often when it's that high, there's a penalty in there as well.
But Buendia's XG was massive on his goal, was what I'm saying.
Yeah, and regardless, domination. What's Unai Emery been able to do that Steven Gerrard couldn't? Because the personnel isn't massively different. Like
structure, tactical organisation. Emery is a very good coach.
Yeah,
very good coach.
Because you still got the two in there, McGinn and Louise. That's pretty much Gerrard was doing that quite often. All right,
that's not ideal. He wants Kamara to be one of them too, who's obviously been injured at the moment.
But Douglas Luiz has not been a bad player. I mean, Arsenal. It's not long ago that Arsenal were bidding big money for Douglas Luiz, weren't they? So that it's not like it's a real step down. Ramsey's been given a bit more license to push forward, but Buendia didn't get the same minutes under Steven Gerrard. I feel like that he has under Emery and has been able to add a bit. Yeah, they're just really, really good at the moment, Villa.
It's 14 consecutive games that they've scored him, and those who've got Chelsea defensive owners players should be aware of that going into the double. You got 2 home games, Villa and Liverpool. I'm not sure I'd want anything on top of what I'd got. I think Chilwell, if you don't have, it'd still be very, very gettable, admittedly. But I wouldn't be. I think if I was wildcard, I wouldn't be going treble Chelsea defense this week, for example. I wouldn't be massively keen on that. They scored in 14 consecutive, 1.87 points per game under Unai Emery. He's just under the 2 points per game baseline that would consider a team to be in Champions League contention. And as said, third best record since he took over. And you look back on the fixtures and go, yeah, they've played City in there. They lost to City. They played Arsenal in there. They lost to Arsenal. Beat United, obviously. They also lost to Liverpool. They beat Tottenham. So they've played the majority of the top teams over this period. It's not like it's been slanted where they haven't played top teams over this period. It's been very, very consistent against a lot of the rest, bar basically that heavy defeat to Leicester when they were 2-1 up and lost 4. So offensively attractive. I was very interested in Buendia. I've been mentioning him nearly every week, and I still think he's a possible solution one for people this week. Remember, they've got Forest at home in 30 as well. So, it's 29 double. Okay, it's 2 away games, but they're scoring regularly. And Forest 30. Watkins, another return. Probably unlucky. It was only the assist, actually. And defensively, a clean sheet, although did some dodgy moments. As much as they deserve to win, Dominic Solanke fucked up really a great chance at 1-0. He's, I think, without a goal now, I want to say since game week 12, I think. He hasn't played every game over that period, it's worth saying. But it's about 8 or 9 games, I think, without a goal. And that's concerning for them because very much they need others to chip in if he's not going to do so at the moment. Bournemouth have now conceded 38 away goals this season.
Yeah, they're 54 in total. That's a lot of goals to concede.
Which is another reason why I really, really don't want to get rid of Iheanacho unless I absolutely know or feel confident that he's not going to play Bournemouth in game week 30 because it's such a good single fixture after the double as well. Fortunately for Bournemouth, their 2 fixtures in 29 are at home and they're capable of doing well in them. It's worth saying we give them a lot of praise last week. And they've been doing quite well, and their fixture list is better than a lot of others.
Yeah, they've got they've got a good sprinkling. I mean, every now and then is a difficult game, but Fulham at home, you'd think they could do something. Leicester away, you'd think they could do something. West Ham at home, they'd think they could do something. Southampton, Leeds, Everton, Palace, still in the fixtures. I think they've still got their destiny in their own hands.
Who's your keepers, Suj? Ward and
I've got Kepa Arrizabalaga.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Neto might be one of the best ones you can get,
What price is he?
It's about 4-5, I think.
Yeah.
Which is going to like, it's not going to, you'd need to take another hit to move Williams to something else. But I think he should come into consideration for you. I think he'd probably be, him and Billing would be the two Bournemouth players that are very attractive at the moment. I think Billing obviously covered up very nicely last week. He is, and did again at the weekend, playing this very high position. So it's still an interesting one for this week and weeks to come. But it's probably just Billing and Neto would be the two if you wanted interest in Bournemouth, I think. Do have a good run 32 to 34 as well, is what I meant. Their fixtures aren't terrible for the running. Villa, I still think defensively, if you want to invest new Mings, which I'd probably be a bit disappointed I just missed that hole, actually. But I think probably at the moment, Mings, Konsa probably stay together with Carlos, probably just ease back into it. We think that as and when it happens, Carlos will probably come in for Konsa. Also, importantly, 90 minutes for Matty Cash. But I think Cash is possibly a little bit dangerous for the double specifically. And particularly that fixture at Leicester, where I think he could play Ashley Young against Harvey Barnes. I've said that a few times recently. You're doing really, really well, Villa. It should be on radar. It's worth saying after Forest, their running's rough. Really, really rough. Newcastle, Brentford, Fulham, United, Wolves, Tottenham, Liverpool, Brighton. The only team below them that they'd have left after that Forest fixture is Wolves away in game week 35. So you should bear that into your mind and you're thinking. I think Martinez he's obviously one you could go to if you're looking to bench boost and need a Ward replacement and have the money in the bank. The beauty with a Martinez is you know that he can haul when a clean sheet comes. He's picked up 7 points in this one again as well. So if you do knock a clean sheet out in that week, there's every chance he'll get you towards 10 points, I think. Yeah, doing great, Villa. Doing great.
Brentford 1, Leicester 1.
Oh, just on David Brooks obviously played. It was lovely to see.
Yeah, of course. And he's such a talented, nice footballer. So yeah. Brentford, Leicester 1-1. One of the biggest stories from this game for me was the lack of yellow card for Ivan Toney. Kind of we're now, he's going to get booked in the first half of the double game week moving forward. Are you just on that? You're a Tony owner. You're just going to ride it out now. You're not going to bother moving it on just in case there's a risk. I'm in the same boat as well.
Yeah,
and that
I've got a clear talisman. It's difficult games, right? It's Brighton away and Manchester United away, but I also know that Brighton particularly will give you a chance. I also look at the United game and think, again, because of their schedule, could it be one where they move the team about a little bit? Remember, United between 29 and 30 will play Newcastle Sunday, Brentford Wednesday, and then Everton Saturday lunchtime. So it's tight turnaround. So I think Brentford are one of them. If you got them at home and you don't score early, it can become quite a punishing game, right? They've been one of the best defensive sides in the league this year. So it's a bad double for the likes of, say, Henry and me and stuff. It's not good. Clearly not. It's 2 away games against 2 of the better teams in the league. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's something there. Do I want to take a hit to remove it? I think maybe if I had Watkins, Havertz, Toney, as I said to you, I maybe would consider Toney to Isak. Maybe. But it's not my biggest problem, Suj. I'd look at it and go, it could be shit, and he gets a penalty during the double, and that's enough, right? So
yeah.
I think he'll stay for me. My expectations on Manchester United away would have been low anyway. I'll just roll with it. And the plan for me, as it will be for many have boxed it in, is to move to Haaland in 30. Which, I mean, would you consider making that move in 29?
No, not in 29.
No, I don't think so for me either.
Not
I
in
bet
29.
I bet after the week Haaland's had, though, some will do it.
Yeah, I can understand that. But yeah, that one's not for me. So yeah, I mean, Leicester, on the other hand, they picked up a point, but they just need to be able to get a win under their belt. They're not really particularly scoring a lot of goals all of a sudden. Even Iheanacho's dropped out of the team. Nobody understands why. Like, you just feel for the guy, because strikers need some consistency in terms of minutes, right, to build up some rhythm and get some momentum, and he just never ever seems to be able to get it. I look at this Leicester team, and relegated or not, you'd think like some other clubs are going to come in for James Maddison, Harvey Barnes, Iheanacho, Yuri Tielemans. Like, all of these guys are going to get picked off in the summer. If they got relegated, their squad would be decimated. Because I'm just like thinking about Harvey Barnes, for example, like good player, talented player. What would happen? Do you think Harvey Barnes would have much better output, for example, if you took him out of the Leicester team and put him in the Spurs team in Son's position or something like that?
It's weird, way too negative. Such.
All right, a better team, for example. I feel like, I mean, because there's so much talent in there.
It depends where you're putting him in, right?
Cultured.
Like, does Harvey Barnes get more returns if you put him in the Arsenal team than what he currently gets? Well, yeah, but then most people would, right?
But could he make that step up? Is he capable as a footballer to make that step up?
I wouldn't say he's better than Martinelli, but could he be a good squad addition for Arsenal, for example? Like yeah. I mean, we're picking the best team in the league currently at the moment. But
I look at Leicester, I'm like, you've got some good players there, but they're just like West Ham, sleepwalking into shit. We're in the bottom three. Now they've got some great fixtures coming up though, so there's got to be a few players there of interest, but they will frustrate, as you know now, being a Madison and Iheanacho owner.
I mean, Maddison, I think is great anyway. Like, I'd want him for this double. I think the double is good. Palace away, Villa at home. I think it's a good double. So I'd want it. And then you've got Bournemouth at home in 30 as well. So I think anybody was wildcarding this week, for example, would struggle to go without James Maddison, I think, even if it was just for those 2 weeks. Then they have City 31. What's key with that as well is, obviously, if the Brighton-Newcastle double does happen, he becomes, and Leicester assets become quite easy to bench in City at City in 31. Then you walk back into Wolves, Leeds, Everton as 3 fixtures after that. And again, the likes of Maddison with the single at home to Everton in 34 will cover up those with a double quite nicely. And it's not to say I won't move him on by that point, but it's certainly worth saying if I've got problems going, I've got Maddison at home to Everton, I need to thump in Bruno Fernandes or similar or something. Maybe I don't, right? So I think Leicester will still be quite attractive over these few fixtures. And I think Maddison's the one. Iheanacho absolutely wouldn't go near at the moment. I wouldn't go near Daka either, by the way. I think what kind of put the nail on for Iheanacho as well was the fact that he brought Vardy on before him at the weekend as well. Defensively, I wouldn't go near him. As said, they've had no clean sheet since the World Cup. However, if you're a Danny Ward owner and don't have the money, I would very much consider going to Everson. Check back on Brendan Rodgers' comments because it really does sound like Everson will play the next game. And let's be honest, he didn't do a lot wrong at the weekend. The goal they conceded was a mad deflected one, which I'm sure pissed off Solly March owners because it's an own goal. Shots going wide. Don't know how Jensen's been given that, to be totally honest. Although, if you count it, he now has 5 returns in his last 6 home games, but have 2 away games in the double. Interesting stat for you on Brentford. So you still yet to win a Premier League game this season when they've had the majority of possession.
Wow.
A single game. I've not won a single game when they've had the majority of the ball.
Wow.
They had 53% at the weekend. And we should be conscious of that. And look, the good news for Brentford is you look at the upcoming games, Brighton, Man United, Newcastle. Yeah, they won't have the majority of the possession in any of those games. They had 33% at Southampton last Wednesday. So it's far better suited without the ball. And like Thomas Frank keeps getting mentioned with the Tottenham job. I'm thinking, not sure. I think he's done an amazing job, but I think stylistically, there's a lot they can improve on. There's no way of criticism. He's done an incredible job. But yeah, there's an issue for them when onus is and expectations on them. Think back to the Palace game, they very nearly lost at home as well. So to reflect that back to what you said at the start about Tony, I'm not that bothered about the fixtures. Do I think he's going to haul? Would I buy him as new? Absolutely not.
It's more the yellow card. If he picks up a yellow card in the first...
He gets it.
It's a lottery, isn't it? Yeah.
It
just makes him easy to sell after 29. Look at it that way.
I think if I didn't have issues in my squad and I could get to Isak, I'd consider it. But would I take a hit for it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. He's so good. Would it truly stun you if Brentford went to Brighton and won 2-1, they scored twice?
No.
Brentford might be one of the best equipped teams in this league to deal with what Brighton are going to come with.
Southampton 3, Selfish Hotspur 3, James.
Are we there already, are we?
We are.
Selfish Hotspur. Who's selfish at that football club? In your opinion, as a neutral, Suj?
The players, of course. Look, do you know, I listened to Conte's press conference. So it started kicking off on Twitter where people were putting snippets of the interview as he says this, and you're like, he said it where? Like I thought it was the TV post-match or whatever else. And I was like, the way that they've cut these, taken these sound bites, you know how people take sound bites and you think, is it a sound bite? And you have to listen to the whole thing. So then I listened to the interview he did on TV afterwards. And I was like, you know what? They've put in brackets sometimes some of the things he said, like shouting and stuff. I was like, he's raised his voice and he's a bit annoyed, but he's not like that. The TV interview I didn't think was ranty. He was angry, but he wasn't ranty. Then I watched the press conference where he was seated and he was fucked off by then, definitely. I was like, right, okay, that is really pushing it. You could argue the case that him trying to get himself sacked and a £5 million payoff is pretty selfish because he's looking at the dineros. I didn't disagree with a lot of some of the stuff that he said, but definitely disagreed with the way he said it, where he said it, and how he said it. You just don't throw everybody under the bus like that. Unless you're willing to have that conversation in private first. You can't be going out and doing it in public.
We don't know. Maybe he has, right? But I just think that's clearly not the done thing. And listen,
no, it's unprofessional.
Anybody who listens,
players being unprofessional, that what he did was unprofessional.
Anybody, and one of the things I always get, and I have to be careful with this, is because quite commonly, if I'm critical of Conte, quite often I get, what about the players, James? Anybody who listens to my Tottenham podcast after we drew with Milan will know I would bin nearly everybody in that squad, bar Bentancur and probably Pedro Porro at the moment. Like, they can all go. That includes even Kane and Son. Yes, Tottenham need a massive rebuild. If to go. Don't, obviously, particularly with Kane, as I said numerous times, I don't want him to go. But if that's part of the rebuild, get on with it. Do it. Clearly, either way, Antonio Conte is not going to be part of that rebuild. What would he do? Let's say, just hypothetically, let's say he went, I'm good. I want a new contract. They sit down, they sort it out, and he goes, I'm going to stay. And then they sell Kane. He just resigned anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we for the regular listeners that don't know about Patreon, obviously patreon.com/Planet FPL, we do a show each and every week called Tottenham, and James will be ranting at some point.
I will. On Wednesday. Yeah. I'll try and keep it to the football here.
Yeah, the off-field stuff. There's so much to cover off, but it wasn't good.
He's got to go. It went too far.
It was not good, and I haven't come across a single Spurs fan that's backing him, even if they agree with what he's saying and some of what he said.
Oh, listen, the stuff that he said, in terms of one trophy in 20 years, like, no one can argue it. It's fact, right? But I also think that's up to opposition fans to take the piss out of us. It's not up to the manager to fucking highlight it. Yeah. And I think, was he actually
he uses terminology like they are used to it here.
Well, yeah, that was it. He said they rather than we. Yeah,
you're part of that. It's not them. He
distances himself from every problem. Yeah,
it's not great.
No,
and nor was the result on the pitch in the end at 3-3, losing a 3-1 lead.
The big one for me, was you talk about they're not playing as a team. I'm not arguing, but who's fucking responsible for that?
Yeah,
you are, mate. So can you? Because one of his great strengths should be organisation and stuff, right? That second goal we conceded is as bad as you'll see from anyone all season. And I'll highlight two players for specific criticism, because if anybody can explain to me why on Theo Walcott's goal that Harry Kane and Eric Dyer, the two most experienced players in the team, go back on the goal line, please write me a love letter. Like, I can't explain that. What are they doing? So they've lost their minds, and then you're in a position where we're 3-1 up. Didn't deserve to be 3-1 up, but you got yourself there. You've won, right? I think Southampton scored like 10 home goals all season or something, which includes Che Adams hadn't scored at home all season, but of course did on Saturday. That was the opening goal. You can't lose from that position. And then even still, right, okay, you've had a shocking moment. You've given them a chance. Mate, literally, you can say, the penalty's dodgy or whatever. I'm not interested. Yeah. Literally straight from the kickoff at 3-2, they nearly equalised to make it 3-3, where Højbjerg makes an attempt at a tackle, was pathetic. Romero acts like he's already doing his cool down or something. He's not interested. Oliver Skip runs past Romero, who's meant to be our world-class best centre-back, to get a block in on Sekou Mora. So I can understand why Conte is angry, because the thing is as well, I was angry, right? After the game, I'm more angry with the players and what I've seen, but also it's him, his rigid tactics, 5-4-1 every game. I'm not being funny, right? Anybody goes and plays that Southampton team at the moment, the chances are to go and dominate them. That said, I had this conversation with Dad on the way home. Their midfield too, better than ours.
Lavia and Ward-Prowse?
Ward-Prowse is better than Skip and Højbjerg.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But I don't think, I don't want to be too critical of Southampton. They deserved what they got out of the game. But were they great? No, I think they were pretty ordinary. Also, very importantly, it's worth saying, the game got thrown off quite a bit at the start of the game. With Richarlison got injured for us. Ben Davies got injured for us. Both of their centre-backs got injured. It was 4 substitutions separately, individually in the first half, right? But for Southampton, that left them in a position where they lost the 2 centre-backs. They played Ainsley Maitland-Niles as centre-back. And he did quite well, okay? Tottenham's 3 goals came from essentially similar things, individual errors from Southampton. The first goal, Kulusevski touched Pereira in way too far. Pedro Porro's got absolute oceans of space. Watch back on James Ward-Prowse and what he says to Pereira after the goal. It's like, what are you doing, mate? Doesn't have to go with Kulusevski. He's got to let him go. And the second and the third goals both come from Kulusevski coming back on his left foot and whipping the ball into the box. Obviously, for Perisic, one is cleared out and he scores. But same thing. You get too deep because Maitland-Niles not a centre-back. Put pressure on him. The only 2 occasions in the whole game we put true pressure on Maitland-Niles, we scored. Kane scored, and then that clearance led to Perisic in the third goal as well. Like, offensively, they were there to be destroyed, Southampton, because of what they had at the back. And we never showed enough. Even after 3-3, Longley should win the game at the end. So that comes back to the manager and the way he sets up the team, right? It's just not good enough.
Both teams don't have a double in the next game week, and so aren't particularly of interest to be steaming into. If you own Kane, like me, away at Everton, I'm loath to sell him just because he's in such good form. I mean, 23 goals this season already is a great return for him.
Everton are his joint second most favourite opponent after Leicester as well.
Yeah, so I'm loath to sell him, but also he could be a placeholder for me if I want to go back to Haaland. So I'm loath to sell him, but go on.
You know what the score will be, don't you?
Sean Dyche 1-0.
Yeah. It probably will be. And I know I've got a bit of stick on Saturday. Like, you're only predicting yourselves for a draw at Southampton. Yes, because I watch this team every week, getting carried away about beating Nottingham Forest and stuff. No, I don't know how we're 4th in the league. Well, I do know it's the failings of other teams. We won't finish there anyway. So I think the football club now is probably just making the decision on whether they think the opportunity to finish 4th is better with him or without him. And to be fair, I've said to you previously, Suj, that probably the best chance of finishing 4th is probably for him to finish the season. But if you've got players who now are knocking on the door and saying, what's going on here? And that's essentially what happened with Mourinho before the cup final, right? The players went and said, got to get him out when they sacked him. If that happens now, then similar will have to happen again. And the irony is he keeps blaming the players. We won't play them. The players that he blames, he picks them all the same game anyway. But then he won't give others like Danjuma and stuff. Won't give him a chance. He never thought when Southampton equalised, going to throw him on for the last couple of minutes here. No. So, yeah, it's coming to a natural conclusion. It's just a case of whether it's now or it's in the summer. In terms of Tottenham investment and assets, it should be said, obviously, Porro scored following the assist against Forest. And he will continue, I think, till the end of the season to probably chip in with some attacking returns and stuff. I'd certainly be cautious of the period of fixtures, Newcastle, Man United, Liverpool. If Conte is still in charge, that Emerson may well play those 3 fixtures. But you're probably okay for this next little period, 29 to 31. Probably, to be honest, Tottenham assets are probably more interesting for those not bench boosting. Like Forster is decent coverage if you're not bench boosting. You wouldn't want to bench boost with him, for example. Kane is obviously fine to keep. He looks probably the standout captaincy in 31 as well, but that may look different, subject to Haaland's rotation concerns against Leicester and Brighton and Newcastle maybe having that extra fixture as well. So I think as much as like you can keep Harry, right? Never doubt him. He's sellable as well, in my opinion.
Wolves 2, Leeds 4. Unhelpful to West Ham that Leeds managed to pick up a win and score 4 goals. But also it keeps Wolves there or thereabouts. I mean, they're only if we win our game in hand, we go above them, which seems bonkers because they've been on since Lopetegui's come in. They I feel like they've given themselves some space and some distance, but they really haven't, and they're still right there in the thick of it.
You have to remember that when they won at Everton, right, in January, they were bottom, Suj.
Yeah, true.
So they've had a good little run to get out of it.
Yeah, true. That's fair.
It's worth saying the honeymoon might be over. He changed the system against Tottenham, went to a back three, and they won the game because of it. But I think they also lost the game, as I said last week, at Newcastle because he then changed to a back three. Yeah. And I don't know if that's caused a little bit of inconsistency. It feels like a consistency of selection. He's now changing, alternating a little bit. He left the Nori out the squad apparently for tactical reasons, despite Bueno not being available. So Johnny obviously played left back again, which he has done for the last 3 games, but obviously got sent off.
Got himself sent off.
Probably would have been in a nice position to bring Nori on if he'd had him in the squad. Didn't. He'd already taken Dawson off at half-time, which I'm told probably because he was at threat of getting sent off because he's already been booked in the game as well. It might even play Kilman at left back, possibly, if there's some sort of bust up there with Nori and if Hugo Bueno's not back fit. Or we go to a back three, but then I'm not sure who would play left wing back. Not sure. Not sure if with Johnny's suspension. Certainly, I know there was some talk about they'll appeal it. They ain't appealing that, wasting their bloody time. They certainly have every right to be upset, particularly about Leeds' 4th goal. But the game was, probably done at that stage following that Johnny's red card. I tell you what, they did have Leeds on the ropes massively after they got the first goal back. Missed a couple of chances between the 2 goals, particularly through Jimenez, where I'm sure Leeds fans watching that have been gonna throw this.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the red card, you'd have once they'd got it to 3-2, and before the red card, you're thinking 3-3 is much more likely than Leeds maybe going 4-2 up. But the red card didn't help. Rodrigo back on the score sheet. A lot of people I know back of the mind type stuff with Rodrigo because again he's a decent price. Their double is what Arsenal away, which is not good, but Forest at home is good. So and then Palace at home straight after, which is not too bad. Then they've got Liverpool, but then Fulham, Leicester, Bournemouth is decent. They've got kind of patches of decent runs. The players are all well priced and not too crazy in terms of pricing as well. If people still want to go back for Nonto or something like that.
No, I mean, even that, again, unfortunately, he's seen a little less minutes under Gracia since he come in and he was hooked fairly early in the game, Wilfred Nonto.
61.
I think they bought Christensen on for him, didn't they? So they'd obviously gone a little bit more defensive. I don't think it went to a back three, but I'm happy to be corrected on that. I think they just played Christensen in a wide position ahead of Ayling. But certainly would have offered extra protection to Ayling on that side, who is a player who can be vulnerable if isolated one-on-one. I think Rodrigo and Bamford, both respectively, would maybe be quite interesting, but I don't feel like we've got enough information. I couldn't tell you which one starts against Arsenal, for example, and I don't think it'll be both. Now, the Arsenal game you're less bothered about. If I said to you now, right, Rodrigo will get half hour at Arsenal and he'll start against Forest, that'd be enough to be quite interested, but I'm not certain that'll be the case. And we have to obviously be aware that he's a little bit short of fitness and stuff. So Rodrigo's got like 11 Premier League goals or something this season. Like he's potentially a great solution. He's one that's kind of round about, say, the Almiron area, for example, if you want to move it on. But I think it's probably going to be a skip for me. Defensively, I'd avoid. Struck finally came back as a sub, and I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in at left back for these forthcoming games in 29 to be a little bit more stable for that. Despite a good run, you can't get over the nagging doubt of all that Arsenal fixture first, unfortunately.
Yeah, agreed. Chelsea 2, Everton 2. Disappointed with Chelsea, but not surprised with Everton and Sean Dyche. But Joao Felix,
don't think we should be surprised about Chelsea either, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. But they had been kind of getting a little bit better. They'd had a few decent results, starting to get a few on the roll, and then suddenly this.
Yeah, and they had the better of this, but then Everton have ended up with two big chances because of some sloppiness defensively, right?
Yeah, and Sims took his goal very well. Came in.
He
and
absolutely
running,
murdered
really
Koulibaly,
good.
didn't he?
Yeah, it was pathetic. It was almost a pathetic attempt to defend.
On that goal, if you watch it back, Chelsea might have an issue there against players in and around that kind of pocket area. Players like Buendia, for example. Because I really like Fernandes. I think we all do like him as a footballer, but I don't think he has a sense of positional danger quite yet. And that's not overly a criticism. I just think people can get wrong side of him. If you watch that goal back, yeah, he ends up being wrong side. And then Sims just absolutely burns Koulibaly, who a couple of years ago, every club in the world wanted to go and buy. Just destroyed him by doing not very much, it's worth saying.
I'm a little annoyed that I've got double Chelsea defence now, if I'm honest with you.
No, I think it's fine. Like, to be honest, if I was
two home games,
if I was free hitting in 29, I'd arguably still want to go Chilwell and Kepa. And I think I'd be quite interested in still saying Havertz as well, with the two home fixtures, the fact he's on penalties. Felix played the more central role at the weekend, Pulisic playing to the left. It's definitely Havertz over Felix for me, although Felix took the goal extremely well. So I think with the two home fixtures, yeah, you'd still be pretty interested. And the Champions League rotation shouldn't matter till afterwards, right? So they play Wolves on the weekend afterwards in game week 30. Then they don't play Real Madrid to the Wednesday. So I think for 29, you should be all right. You're not safe with people like Reece James because of quick turnaround, that's all. But like Chilwell should play twice and stuff.
They're playing everyone who's in the race other than yourselves, the top four. They've still got Liverpool, United, Brighton, Arsenal, City, and Newcastle to go in their run-in. So they've got a tough run-in. And Champions League, if they can get through the next tie, which is not going to be easy at all, you wouldn't make them favourites in any way.
Oh, no, but that's what I'm saying about that Brighton fixture in 31.
Yeah. I mean, but they've got to prioritise Champions League over the league.
No, but listen, never getting top four. Exactly. Chelsea have got to do what's best for them. And I think Reece James, I'd be extremely surprised if he plays against Brighton in 31 as an example, right? It's not to say you can't go and buy Reece James now. If you bought Reece James now, it's a problem. You'd have to look at 31 and go, is he going to play Madrid Wednesday, Brighton Saturday, and then Madrid Tuesday? Probably not. I think he might be quite busy with Vinicius Jr. in that quarterfinal, which it's not in question, right? That's where Chelsea's eggs are, is in the Champions League. There's no doubt about it. And if they get themselves right for those two legs, they're capable of winning. We know this. So that 31 fixture is better for Brighton than it looks and worse for Chelsea than it looks. It could even be the likes of Chilwell. Wouldn't be surprised. Doesn't play that game. Is he going to play left wing back Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday? And Brighton aren't give you an intense test, right? If you play on that flank, you've got to deal with March all game long and stuff. So I'd be very cautious of that from a Chelsea perspective, which probably still makes Kepa one of the best go-tos. I'm not concerned about Edward Mendy being back fit. One that certainly is concerned is Wesley Fofana's pulled out of the France squad.
Right.
That
lasted long then, didn't it?
Yeah. Unconfirmed as yet, but there's certain ones like Pope, for example, coming out the England squad, Fabian Schär coming out the Switzerland squad. They feel more like they're okay, give them a bit of rest and recuperation because they've both been carrying niggles. This one sounds more like he might be out and struggling for the Real Madrid game, for example. And would you be surprised if Chelsea, even in any case, went, shit, we'll leave him till Madrid? So if you've gone down the Fofana route, you might have a problem now. I think it's still Kepa, Chilwell, Havertz the best three. For Everton, there's no interest, although James Tarkowski will get 15 points against Tottenham in game week 29. You can probably bet on it. 11 points from 8 played under Dyche, right? That's all they need to be. Tick above that, 1 point per game, they'll be absolutely safe. Their fixtures are rough. But Tottenham at home is not. And I mean, you're biased against Tottenham. No, I watch us. Tottenham home fixture is not as bad as it looks. I would say if I still had James Tarkowski and I was looking to bench boost, I would look to sell. Is the reality. I would be looking for something else. But yeah, don't be surprised if you fucking hauls.
And let's move on to Sunday, James. Arsenal 4, Crystal Palace 1. I mean, they needed to come back after dropping out of the Europa League with a bit of a statement, and they did. They clearly dominated this game. Possession, chances, the quality of the goals was fantastic. You do feel like when I watched back some of the extended highlights, if that Zaha shot comes off the post, hits Ramsdale and goes in, and then they're suddenly 1-0 down, the complexion of the game changes quite a bit. But the reality is, I mean, losing Joachim Andersen in the warm-up, you just knew Palace were going to get battered in this one. I just felt like, even if that had gone in, part of me is trying to clutch at straws to say that if that goes in, the game's got a completely different complexion. They would have probably still steamrolled these 3s and 4s, wouldn't they?
I mean, you suddenly turn up to the Emirates and you got James Tompkins and Luka Milivojevic in your team, and I think, yeah, what are you expecting? You're gonna chase shadows. To be totally honest.
Did, and the goals were such good quality.
Just on that Ramsdale one, if you watch it back from behind the goal, how in the world? And Arsenal obviously, of course, thoroughly deserved to win, but how it comes off the post and hits Ramsdale on the back of his foot and comes back out for a corner rather than going to the goal, I can't explain. No idea.
It's like 80% chance of going in the goal, 20% chance of missing.
Yeah.
And it takes that miss. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, incredible. A well deserved to win, obviously. There's no doubt. And obviously
Joe Whitworth in goal for Palace as well. No,
the keeper's, it's not really a huge fault for any of the goals or anything. He's acquitted himself fine, but he doesn't help.
Psychology of having your reserve goalkeeper or a kid in there.
I'd say probably losing Anderson was probably the bigger blow.
Big deal.
Let's talk about Vieira in a second. I think probably the key thing here from Arsenal is, was there anything new that we learned yesterday? No, other than probably dropping Trossard is going to be increasingly difficult because he links the play so well for them at the moment. And actually, you look at these more difficult fixtures coming up, which they've got coming up, and you think he'd be particularly useful, actually. I wouldn't buy him as new. I guess it's Odegaard owners are probably the ones that are like, how have you just got 7 goals at home to Bournemouth for Crystal Palace and got nothing out of it, considering he'd been hauling just before it? Yeah, you're a little bit unlucky. And there's every chance you benched him against Fulham last week as well. Yeah, you've just been a little bit unlucky there, to be honest. Obviously, Saliba's injury is a blow. Yeah, there's no point hiding from it. We don't know the extent to that yet, but I would suggest that if they go to Liverpool without Saliba in game week 30, I would suggest that's a problem. When you got a big physical and powerful player like Darwin Núñez to come in off the flank in between White and Holding, yeah, they may suffer some problems there. But it's worth saying at the moment, Arsenal can afford to lose that game and still win the league, right? Now it's about, for those of us bench boosting, what do we do? Do we bin this off or not? And you look at Leeds at home and you think, I look at it with Saka and I go, it's Leeds at home. Can he just, I mean, he could be my bench boost total by himself, couldn't he? With another 18-pointer. That's clearly his highest score of the season. I presume that's probably his highest score in any FPL game, I would guess, probably historically for Bukayo Saka. But can you use him as part of a bench boost this week, like Haaland or Harry Kane? Yeah, absolutely. But it's what's to come afterwards does make more of a case to sell, particularly as well if you're free hitting in 32, because suddenly it becomes Liverpool away, West Ham away, Man City away, Chelsea at home, Newcastle away, Brighton at home. And again, you spin your narrative either way. You say they've got brilliant value assets, who they're the best team in the league at the moment. Do I want to go without them? Or do you take the approach and go, well, those fixtures are rough enough. Can I go against them? And you certainly can. Listen, if you buy in Saka next season, he ain't going to be 8.6 or whatever he is now, right? He's going to be in the 10 million plus zone. You buy in a Martinelli, Odegaard, you're putting a couple more million on them than what they are now, for example. So do they still maintain unbelievable value for you as assets? Yes, of course, absolutely. And I think it will come down to personal preference. One note on the defensive players, though. This habit of conceding goals in home games is not going away.
Sloppy. It's annoying.
It just continues to persist. I think they've got 3 home clean sheets this season. Yeah. One of them is against Nottingham Forest, so that's an absolute given. The others against Newcastle and Everton. Leeds have just scored 4 at Wolves. That's not to say Leeds will definitely score at Arsenal, but I'd look at that again now and go, oh yeah, probably, I don't know, 3-1 Arsenal or something like that, probably. And so then where do I sit? Gabriel, I think, right, move. I think. And even with those away fixtures coming up, but then their away defensive performance in terms of clean sheets away from them been so much better, right? Clean sheet at Tottenham, clean sheet at Chelsea. There's been others I'm forgetting as well, decent away clean sheets as well. I think the defensive players I'd sell for bench boosters. The likes of Saka is going to come down to personal interpretation. The other thing is no concerns on selection. As long as they come back from the internationals, okay. No midweek game afterwards. There's no additional fixture for them. They'll pick their strongest team against Leeds. It's an 8-day gap to Liverpool. So there's no doubt from that perspective. And that makes it, it's not one of them where they've been playing in Europe on the Thursday before and you think, I've got a single game week player. Could he be rotated, rested? And in any case, look at what he did yesterday with Martinelli. Suppose he had a conversation with on Saturday. And I said this to you on Friday. He might, because he missed the penalty, go, do you want to play? And if the player says yes, then he'll play. And that looks like that's the conversation that happened. Just to get the Lisbon penalty miss immediately out of his mind. They still went strong across the rest of the team. The Saliba injuries would be a concern, though, because even when you look at that yesterday, Palace, particularly through Zaha, again, that kind of inside left channel against in between White and Holding, had some joy. Zaha was very unlucky not to return yesterday. They've got brilliant fixtures to come for the rest of the season. And I'm absolutely certain they'll be fine, by the way. The Patrick Vieira sacking, Serge, opinion?
Stupid.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I don't know what they're hoping to achieve, and particularly when the rumours are get Roy Hodgson back and weed it out. But I can understand that they're not happy with the style of play and they haven't been creating chances and no shots on goal and all that kind of thing. I can understand that. But the timing just seems stupid after they'd had some difficult fixtures. They hadn't done particularly badly in them from a defensive point of view. They'd still picked up the odd draw here and there. So
I think other than Tottenham, they lost very silly to in January early. All the games had lost before yesterday had been like a single goal.
Yeah.
They're drawn with United, Newcastle, Brighton at home, Liverpool at home. What was the real expectation? The easiest game they had in 2023, up to the point they sat in, was Villa away. Villa have got the third best record since Emery took over, right? So it's not an easy fixture. They went far more pragmatic approach because I think they had this 3-month span of fixtures, which you've been screaming about since November, December. Oh shit, Palace is run, where he's gone really pragmatic. And I'm sure they were going to open back up with what they've got left and put Eze back in the team with Zaha, etc., etc. And I have to say, my overriding feeling on it is that Palace are more likely to go down now than they were 7 days ago. And that's not because they've lost to Brighton and Arsenal, because we'd expected that anyway. But I think it could cause some issues. There is worth saying speculation that there was apparently some bust up with some players over a Christmas party and a tour to Turkey in December or something. That it's the stuff that we can't see that perhaps went on behind the scenes may have caused some issues. But I didn't see a team there that weren't trying. I don't look at them the way they started at Brighton on Wednesday or the way they defended man-to-man against Man City last week and gone, you've got players there not trying for their manager. I didn't think that at all. You don't have to look at the results. Losing by odd goal or drawing really tough games. That period of going 3 games without a shot on target was rough.
Yeah,
of course it was. But yeah, I think they'd have come out of it fine. And I think it's a mistake. I was asked on my stream on Friday, what sort of manager should Palace go for? And I said, someone like Patrick Vieira. That's generally how I feel about it right now. So I cannot foresee, and I know from Palace fans there'll be a lot of love for Roy Hodgson, right? And he saved them before and stuff. But I cannot foresee how putting him back in charge, which we know is definitely pragmatic for these fixtures coming up, is going to be better for them than Patrick Vieira doing it. I cannot see that personally.
Agreed. James, that's a wrap on the games. Do you want to tell everybody what they got to look forward to this week? We've got a bit of time, so maybe I'll have a look on Twitter, see if we've had any questions in. But obviously, being that it's the international break, keep your powder dry, people, because A, we'll have fixture announcement with Newcastle Brighton that might dictate your transfer plans. B, there might be injuries or that kind of thing that happens as well.
I mean, particularly for bench boosters.
Yes.
Bench boosters should not be making a transfer till at least Friday, March the 31st in the evening. log the fuck out, honestly. Don't do anything. If you've got like an injury in your squad, who say you've got Almiron and you want to go early for someone who's not on international duty and you're not bench boosting, be my guest. Otherwise, like seriously, leave it alone for a week, people. Before we go through content though, so should we just cover off the 6 teams who didn't play this week?
Yes. Well remembered.
Because I think that there's some relevant things about them. So Brighton players are of interest. Obviously, would have played United and will do so in the FA Cup semi-final now. I think they'll beat United in that semi-final, by the way. I just think probably fixtures will come too much for United. At some point, Santa will have to give. And I think we've seen, even again yesterday with the Fulham game, yeah, they weren't playing great. For Brighton assets, McAllister, March, Mitoma, we're not telling you anything you don't already know. It's worth saying McAllister played a deeper role yesterday and Pascal Gross played right back. Part of the conversation we've had previously with Brighton assets is that obviously Gross has tended to play right back in some of the more difficult fixtures, such as Liverpool and Chelsea. So that was a surprising one yesterday, but it might have been just to get sort of minutes in for the likes of Undav and Ferguson. Ferguson is such a talent, by the way. He really, really... Have you still got him, Suj? Or did you bin it?
I don't want to talk about it.
No, if you binned it, it's fine.
Now, I've binned it for Isak, right? So I can't really complain.
Fucking hell, it's fine.
But I'm like, you know, it's annoying when your players score points in a competition that's not FPL, not Premier League. But yeah.
But I think he's probably not gonna start both games on a double, right? You got Undev and Welbeck there. McAllister, I'd be a little bit cautious of. I'd also be quite cautious of his Stupinan at this stage. Purely a couple of things. One is the potential involvement of international duty, and this applies to a lot of people. May even reply to McAllister over this break and stuff. Did you see the Zerbi's comments?
No.
After the game, he said that he was asked why he took his Stupinan off, and he said because I thought he'd play better. It's very, very blunt and brutal about it.
He'd play better.
Yeah. And I did a piece on Talking Tactics for advanced tier patrons last week and looked at Brighton's start at Leeds and how they manipulated actually to move their box to move more to a different shape of a 2-3-4-1 build up, like literally 7 minutes into the game against Leeds rather than what they normally do. I commented on that about Webster giving the ball away and not releasing the ball quick enough against Leeds. And said he might come out the game, might come out the team for Palace straight away. Yep, did. And they could use Levi Colwill in a left back position. I think that would be unlikely, but I think it's something that they could do. And I think the closer it gets, if I want to reinvest in Brighton, it might just make me go Lewis Dunk. That's not to say you should have fear if you're an Estupinan owner, but I'd be a little bit cautious of it. Still, might be the solution for you, Serge, as well.
Well, if the Brighton double gets announced, still is the solution for me.
What I'd say is I'd still
and
convinced...
even if it doesn't, he might still be the solution.
I'm still convinced that at some point before the end of the season, Sanchez will probably come back in. But I would be very, very confident, despite Sanchez playing yesterday, that Steele will certainly start the Brentford game in game week 29, which is the first of the double. Steele has done absolutely nothing to suggest he'll come back out of that team at the moment. So that's probably the solution for usage, where you go Ward to Steele. Then you've got the money to get a decent Williams replacement at the 4.4, 4.5-ish bracket. It's probably what I take it you haven't got free, Brighton, have you? Oh, you sold Ferguson, so you're
2.
right.
So I'm good. Steele's perfect.
That's probably the solution for you. As long as just be aware that it probably will catch up with you a little later in the season.
Yeah, it's fine, but I need
and also restricts you from getting another Brighton player.
Yeah.
That's all you got to think. Once you commit to that, you send 2 transfers. If you, I do need to get a Stupinan or March or whatever you don't have, for example. On United themselves, it was Sabitzer and McTominay as 2 central midfielders. So Fernandes did play higher yesterday. It's worth saying his only 2 penalty area touches during that game, though, were his 2 goals. One, obviously, the penalty, and the second one, real late breakaway. United were in massive, massive trouble until obviously the intervention of Williams' red card was correct, and Alexander Mitrovic's absolute moment of madness, who very much could be looking at longer than a 3-game ban, I would suggest, possibly. Cannot, I know it wasn't that aggressive, but you cannot put your hands on a referee. And he's liable to miss a very good period of fixtures for Fulham, which includes Bournemouth, West Ham, Everton, Leeds as the next 4. That Leeds game obviously now goes ahead in game week 32. Andreas Pereira, is he down to 4.3 now? So just as
He's
a
dropping
note,
like a stone.
I know
He's
he's
dropping like a
definitely at least
stone.
4.4. I think he might have gone to
I'm going to put him
4.3.
up now.
He probably will be on the pens for the next few and will probably enable something for people. He's obviously not one for bench boosters this coming week with just Bournemouth away. But I'd have real close eyes on that. Obviously, Solomon's quite cheap.
4-3,
well
you are correct, James.
I think for United, I think De Gea and Shaw would be the 2 defensive ones to look at. De Gea would solve a problem for someone like you, potentially, Suj, if you had the money to get there. I think Luke Shaw is clearly the best one of the back 4 to go and get. I'd be concerned about Dalot versus Wan-Bissaka, even if it's not for the double, perhaps the Everton fixture in 30. Luke Shaw, I think, will probably still be all right. I don't think there's great alternatives to play the left-back position. And I think he'll probably play all 3 of those games in 29 to 30, which I think we'd have to say, because of Varane's injury record, and he didn't start yesterday, would be a little bit of a concern. Martinez will probably play them all, but doesn't offer the same offensive threat or bonus potential of Shaw and De Gea, respectively. Would you have a preference, Shaw or De Gea, if there was no money, Such?
That's a close call. I like De Gea.
It's probably just circumstantial on what you're selling.
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, De Gea has been really good and really consistent, and he has picked up he's done quite well on the BPS. Luke Shaw's got the attacking. I'm kind of weighing up De Gea's ability on the BPS in a clean sheet versus Luke Shaw's attacking potential, and it's a really tight one for me. I'm prioritizing. I will be prioritizing Bruno. I want to figure out. I'll probably looking at trying to see if
I'm not convinced. I'd tell you my real concern with Bruno Fernandes, and he's always the one. When I wildcarded, I always had this week penciled Gabriel to Shaw, Saka to Fernandes. It was exactly my plan going into this. It's not the Saka to Fernandes that bothers me so much. It's knowing that once I go Bruno, I think he's in for the whole season, and I'm not sure because moving forward, good fixture 30, good fixture 31. If I free hit 32, I've got one of the best fixtures in 33, which is the Tottenham away. 34 probable double, 37 probable double. Good fixtures 35, 36. I can't get rid. Once I'm in, I'm in. And I'm a little bit conscious of that. I think De Gea versus Shaw, as I said, will come down to probably what you're selling. So for me, I don't have a goalkeeper problem, so priority would be Shaw. I think if I was wildcarding, I'd go De Gea. You just know that's goalkeeper coverage for 34 and 37 doubles further down the line. He won't get rotated. No. Very confident of that. Jack Butland's the alternative. I think he'll play every game. Could he, right at the end, maybe if they've made a European final or something, get rotated? Yeah, possibly. Maybe in like 38 or something, assuming they've already qualified for the Champions League. But that will apply to any United player. We've got a Europa League final on the Wednesday after game week 38, and they've locked in 3rd. They'll probably change the whole team, won't they? Yeah, and consider that you're going to probably want 3 for the potential double in 37. That's a consciousness thinking way ahead with Manchester United. Liverpool, Suj. Salah's under consideration for me to get in for Saka, apart because of doubts about Bruno Fernandes.
You're not fussed about the fact that they're.
I just think with him, I mean, it's obviously a rough double and it's a rough game week 30 fixture, but with him, do the fixtures matter so much? I know, like, you'll get space against City, for example, right?
No, he's done all right this season. I'm gonna have him, but I'm not excited by it. Like, I don't know if he's the one that people should be thumping in to try and get in Salah because of the fact that it's Chelsea and City away.
The other thing is, once I go Salah, I'll probably block myself off Fernandes as well. Interestingly. So plenty to ponder. And to be honest, I really am going to switch my mind off it for a week. There's no point. We come back. Oh, Salah got injured in international duty. Okay, fine. We're not doing that. We're looking at alternatives. This is a really good opportunity to rest the mind ahead of the return, guys. Defensively, I wouldn't go and buy this week, but I'm very interested in Konate potentially going forward because I think now that they're out of Europe, they'll want to keep him in the team with Van Dijk, and it is a cheap way in when we know that they're going to have a double, most likely in 34 against Fulham. Alisson is another one I think could potentially solve a problem for people in terms of a goalkeeper. Maybe if they've got the money in the bank, just obviously check if you're going like. If you've got 7 million in the bank and you're going like Ward to Alisson, just check obviously that you can still make your Tony to Haaland move the following week.
That's the one.
If that's what you've got planned, for example. Trent, Robertson, you know the upside. Liverpool have a brilliant run of fixtures after that Arsenal game in 31. Leeds, Forest, West Ham, Tottenham at home, Brentford, Leicester, Villa, Southampton is what they finish with. They've got a super run of fixtures and no distractions. So Liverpool are high priority for me. City, not so fussed other than Haaland, who only just scored the 8 goals over the last week. Put the fear of God into everybody. Bench boosters, can you not put him on the bench for your bench boost? Because there's no way you'd actually bench him.
No.
You'd play him.
Oh, let him do what
definitely
they
play him. I've even seen this morning someone say they're going to captain him in 29. With his record in home game, he's scored more hat-tricks in home games this season than he's blanked. That's honestly true. So look, those who've got great. I think like would I move Tony to Haaland now? Probably not, but yeah, I'm planning it for game week 30. I'll suck it up this week. I certainly wouldn't captain him personally with a single. Although it's worth saying I don't think that there's super double game week captaincy options. I think Rashford will end up being for the majority just by default of it being him. Well, who was your captain in the double if it wasn't Rashford? Just briefly. Would you consider Maddison?
If I owned. I don't know. If you
Isak,
got
Trippier.
Watkins maybe.
Chelsea and Leicester away? I don't think so, mate. You couldn't captain Tony now, could you? Because of the suspension threat. Brighton players, arguably.
I was going to say Mitoma,
McAllister, March, yeah. Probably is. It probably is them if it's not Rashford, probably.
Trippier.
Yeah, it's reasonable. Isak's Trippier. They're both reasonable. What I'm saying is the choices for captaincy is not great. I mean, what if I said you Ben Rama, Suj? Ben Rama, differential captain.
I'd want you to be in a position where you really need to take a punt and are chasing in a mini league or something and want to go completely rogue. Like it's a Hail Mary to go Ben Rama as captain of the double game.
I think he's an interesting one though.
Just
briefly,
sure.
West Ham players, would he be the one most of interest for you?
We have had a question come in on Twitter. What would you do? So I think Areola's fine. He's acceptable if you want to go with Areola.
Short term, probably though. We should be cautious.
Yeah, I would say so. But if you wanted a goalkeeper's going to got 2 home fixtures in a double. If you're going with the defender, Zuma's fit now.
I like that.
One. I think
that's an interesting shout.
The fullback positions are subject to rotation. Soufal might be back fit by then. We don't know. So what will happen at right back? Johnson might move to left back. So I'd say Zuma's your best, safest bet in the middle there. Midfielders, Ben Rama's the best value. Bowen has a high ceiling and is explosive potentially.
If Ben Rama and Bowen were the same price, who would you buy?
Ben Rama at the moment.
There you go. So that
Ben Rama.
Okay.
And then up top, obviously Danny Ings has been doing okay. He wasn't great the other day, but he's been doing okay. But then Scamacca had a decent game against the Farmers in the Europa League. I don't want to be disrespectful, but they were not good. We beat him 4-0 and it should have been 6 or 7. Scamacca was his usual aggressive self, getting shots off and stuff. So maybe he is in line to start again. So I wouldn't even touch it up top. It'd be Ben Rama, Zuma, Areola, the 3. Probably Ben Rama, Areola, Zuma in that order that I would consider if you must.
Yeah, for me, with what I've got, the one I'd consider the most is Zuma. I've got a bit cold on Danny Ings as an idea, as a potential very short term to replace, say, Iheanacho for me. No, I think I'd go for Isak now at this stage, personally. I know West Ham fans weren't too impressed with how Danny Ings played against Villa. City players, it's another one. You've got to factor in 34, 37, probable doubles. Let's hope they win the majority of the games and try and rein Arsenal in. They're obviously going to end up in a position where they're they're going to end up with 2 games in hand. That's fairly obvious now, almost certainly anyway. I'm not sure where I'd want to go other than Haaland. I think the one that interests me most in future weeks is probably Diaz now. I think he's going to play the majority of the game, but then that may also be determined by if they're still in the Champions League or not for that second part of the season. Rough. I absolutely bet money that people will end up buying Ederson again come game week 34. Out of the same thing, out of the same thing as always. Oh, I want a guaranteed City starter for 2 games.
Yeah, I get it.
And listen, it might be right. City historically, when they've been in a tight race like this, the longer it's gone on, the more those clean sheets have gone up. But they haven't really justified it this season. KDB, I think it'd be more Foden at the moment. You'd take a gamble, wouldn't you?
Yep.
Not this week specifically, but in forthcoming weeks. Right, I think that covers the 6 teams anyway, Suj.
Lovely jubbly. And to be honest, James has covered off a lot of the questions that we've had in on Twitter that I have skimmed through. You can guess who 80% of the questions are about, James?
Isak?
No.
Oh, Conte.
Yeah, it's all Conte related.
Yeah, I'll bring the Blake machine on Wednesday, mate.
Yeah. And if you want to catch that podcast, you know where to find us is patreon.com/Planet FPL. We'd love to have you as part of the Patreon community. Our Slack channel is always lively with fans of all of the different clubs, prize leagues, and of course, additional podcasts each and every day. Advanced tier, you get additional video content from James as well, including Talking Tactics, which is quite a favourite for the advanced.
Yeah, where I'm actually going to dismantle the Tottenham performance from 3-1 up against Southampton.
We shall see if they were, in fact, selfish. I'm going to be selfish and now go and do something else. So, bye, listeners. Minding my own business.
Oh, shall I not tell them about the content this week then?
Oh, did you not do that? You hadn't, had you?
No.
You pivoted into talking about the other teams.
Nice and quick. Leeds versus Forest tomorrow, COTC with Andy Martin and Mark Southerns. We've got Newcastle Man United next week for you on COTC as well.
Cool.
Wednesday's Sky, Thursday be People's Poll podcast. Topics will go out on Wednesday.
Yeah,
exactly that. Friday, I'll be streaming Patreon content this week. Q&A today. Tomorrow, a much requested podcast on multi-club ownership in our Money in Football series. Wednesday will be Tottenham. Thursday, FPL Odyssey is hosting a quiz, which I'll be answering for. And we're going to have a bit of an England roundtable on Patreon on Friday, which you won't be a part of, Serge, because you're disappearing for about 2 weeks, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I'm in Spain for a week. So if anyone's in Benidorm next week, drop me a message. But
Serge, we're off to Benidorm.
Benidorm, indeed. So I'm going to be there for a week in Alicante.
Can't you afford anything better now?
I'm not going to Benidorm specifically because of the price, James. I'm going because a friend of mine's got a camp out there that we're going training at. But it's all right. It's nice. Alicante. I think Benidorm's right. Not that I've ever been.
We say Alicante, yeah.
Yeah, that's the airport I'm flying into. So yeah, busy couple of weeks ahead, and I won't be around at all on the content. But it's international break, and actually, it'll probably be better without me anyway. Stay safe. Look after yourselves.
No, it won't. I'll have some guests on there.
Lovely jubbly. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. As ever, play it your way. No early transfers this week. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man child.